Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Scott Peterson, the Manager of Media Relations and Strategic Partnerships for Montgomery County Executive Mark Elrich. I'd like you to welcome you to Mark's weekly media briefing. As you well know, I'll be moderating through. We have Chief Mark Yamada from the Montgomery County Police Department joining Mark Elrich today. We'll take some questions after the end of the chief's remarks, and then we will have come back to Mark with more of an update later. General questions we will push to the end. So thank you so much for joining us. And without further ado, County Executive Mark Elrich. Good afternoon.
Thank you all for joining us again this week. Certainly been an interesting week. What we've been watching since last Friday in Los Angeles, the immigration raids followed by protests that have incited an unprecedented, over-the-top, and unnecessary federal response. And quite frankly, it could happen here. What is chilling about all of this is how the federal government has crossed another line. Over Governor Newsom's objection, President Trump invoked the Insurrection Act in order to deploy the National Guard in California. That hasn't happened since the Civil Rights era, when federal troops were used to enforce civil rights over the objections of segregationist governors. Protesting and civil disobedience are not insurrections. The president should know the difference between January 6, 2020, when he actually encouraged an insurrection. So he knows what an insurrection looks like. He knows what the objectives of an insurrection are. These acts of civil disobedience are not insurrections. No one in these protests had the objective of overthrowing the government. Conflating the two very different actions will invariably lead to violating people's civil rights. A protester engaging in civil disobedience, say blocking an entrance, can be charged with a civil offense, and that would be normal. But charging them with an act of insurrection is a grotesque misuse of power and a violation of a person's constitutional rights. To make matters worse, we're seeing the opposite. The federal government is using force against the state, trying to de-escalate the situation, and even threatening to arrest the governor, Gavin Newsom. There is no evidence that the state could not control the protests. In fact, they were making arrests of people who were violating the law in their actions. Bringing in the Guard or the Army was meant to escalate tensions and create fear, which is totally unnecessary. These actions should concern everyone. I've protested injustice throughout my life. I've been tear gassed more than once, but I will always support the right to protest. People engaging in civil disobedience understand they could well be arrested if they continue to take actions after being told to stop. The right to protest is a fundamental right, but if you break a county law, as acts of civil disobedience may do, you have to expect that the laws are going to be enforced, but you will not be charged with insurrection. I have a responsibility to keep our community safe, whether you're demonstrating or standing on a police line. That's why I've been in close contact with our police chief and MCPD leadership. We're reviewing our policies around demonstrations and reemphasizing our commitment to de-escalation. MCPD does not and will not participate in immigration enforcement. That is simply not our job. And that is not just a police issue. Our Office of Community Partnerships, Regional Service Center, Health and Human Services are all engaged with community members right now to make sure that people have trusted information and support. This week also brought the implementation of a new travel ban. It targets 19 countries, mostly Black, Brown, or Muslim majority nations. This ban also includes Haiti, which is 95% Christian. And I have to say that the turmoil and instability on Haiti has been a long-standing American policy that dates back to when Haiti originally gained its independence. This country, our country, has been hell-bent on making sure, and back in the old days, they used to be more blunt, they wanted to make sure there was not a successful Black-run government on the island of Haiti, because in the early 1800s, they wanted to make sure that the slaves in the southern states did not have a model just offshore of the United States of a successful state run by Black people. So this country has been long engaged in the instability, and in my lifetime, that included the support of Papa Doc Duvalier and Baby Doc Duvalier, who were some of the worst tyrants and most egregious murderers in the world who enjoyed full US support. Meanwhile, countries like Saudi Arabia and Qatar, both with records of supporting actual terrorism, but where the president has growing business interests and political ties, they're exempt. This has nothing to do with national security. It's about discrimination and control. All of the nations impacted by the ban have residents and relatives living here in Montgomery County. I encourage anyone being impacted by this travel ban to contact our Gilchrist Immigrant Resource Center. With both the parade as well as protests being planned for this upcoming weekend, we have a lot of activity to monitor to ensure that everyone is peaceful, safe, and have their constitutional rights respected. So I want to now welcome our guests from the Montgomery County Police Department to talk more about MCPD, how they're preparing to support peaceful expression and community safety in the days ahead. So I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. County Executive. Mark Yamada with the County Police Department. I'm the Chief of Police. Our commitment here is to public safety. And when I say safety, I mean for everyone, not only our protesters, but those that they're protesting against and our community members. We have a policy in place where we are content neutral. We don't care who you are, what you're protesting against, or who you're protesting against, how you do it, as long as you stay within the confines of the laws within Montgomery County. Do not block traffic, do not block public walkway access, do not use amplified noisemakers, and we reach a peaceful agreement with almost every organized protest, and there have been over 153, I think, that we handled in 1 year, where there were no arrests made. That's our last resort. Is to arrest or charge somebody. We want to allow everyone to enjoy their First Amendment rights of free speech. And we're all for that. We make contact with the organizers whenever possible to make sure everything is understood. We provide warnings in advance should we see anything that is illegal. And only then, if you fail to obey the warnings that are given, can that result in either a citation or criminal enforcement.
Thanks, Chief. Chief, can you move your camera there? There's something on the right side,
It's my
left side,
bookcase.
left side. Yeah, left side of your screen. Okay, just want to make sure that anyone on the TV gets a clear shot there. Can we, for the media joining the call, if you have any questions for the county executive or the chief, please raise your hand in the chat and I will call on you. Kate Ryan is always the quickest to the draw. Kate Ryan, WTOP.
Hey, so question to Chief Yamada on the protesting and, as you said, no blocking roadways or sidewalks. If someone is standing static on a sidewalk, I recall during protests outside justices' homes, there was some back and forth about whether or not people could be there, if it was okay if they were moving. Is that correct? And then I have to ask about the Parker bot. And I don't know if that's now or later, but that's a follow-up question I have.
Yeah, as long as people, and thank you, Kate. I mean, as long as people are moving and not intentionally blocking someone's access to the front of a store or along a sidewalk, we have no problem with that. And we'll always try to approach that individual. If it comes to question, we will seek to engage them in some sort of conversation, provide them with adequate warning, inform them what they're doing is probably not appropriate, and see if we can get any sort of cooperation.
Got you. And then
Kate, let's
yes.
come back on the Parker bot for a second.
Okay, then let me go back to one follow-up on it.
Yeah,
yes, I have a follow-up on this subject right now,
okay,
which is amplified noise. Would that also be megaphones? I'm assuming you're talking about speakers. People like to bring speakers to some of these things, but that would also apply to megaphones. And is that in residential areas only or anywhere?
That's pretty much anywhere. We try to provide some educational material on what that would look like to anyone who's willing to take it from us. But yes, a microphone, especially speakers, noisemakers, things like that, banging on drums, musical instruments in excess of the noise limits.
Got it. Thanks. And I'll come back on the Parker bot.
Thank you, Kate. Lionel Donovan, WSA 9.
Good afternoon. Yes, this question is for.
Take your pick.
Lionel, you just went mute accidentally in the middle of your question.
Oh, apologies. Can you all hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can hear you now. Please repeat your
Oh,
question from the beginning.
thank you so much. Yes, this is for Chief Yamada. It's in regards to some comments that he made on Monday regarding understaffing and recruitment issues for the police department. I was wanted to reach out to you as far as, how much of an issue has it been as far as getting officers for or getting recruits for Montgomery County Police, and also according to 2024's annual report on crime and safety. Crime has gone down in the county overall. And so, with that being said, can you talk a little bit more like why you think Montgomery County Police needs more officers given that crime has been going down?
Yeah, well, we're about 189, I think, at last count, and that number continues to fluctuate in terms of vacancies from our authorized complement. I think it's a testament of the officers who work here, our professional staff, the fact that we have still maintained excellent service and been able to reduce crime in almost every crime category across the board, especially our violent crimes. Recruitment continues to be a struggle, but mind you, even if I were to get 190 officers tomorrow, we are still not where we really need to be in terms of staffing. That would be if we fill every vacancy, I'm still going to tell you we are short officers. We're not where we should be from a national standpoint when you compare officer to community ratios. But it's a testament to our officers, the fact that we were able to do such an excellent job. We managed to do significantly more with significantly less over a long period of time. But yeah, in terms of staffing, it continues to be a struggle. We've seen some improvements with recruitment. We've had bigger classes recently, more diverse classes, better reflection of our community members that we serve. So those are all pluses. And the county executive went out of his way this year to try to help us out with our salaries and benefits for officers and things like that.
And just one follow up. It's the use of technology from Montgomery County Police, whether it's expanding the drone program, setting up speed cameras. Has that been a way to kind of offset the understaffing in the department, or is this something that you would want to use in addition to having more officers, or is these technology approaches as a way to kind of replace, or I guess kind of take the place of officers not being on the streets?
Yeah, innovation is the way, and technology is a way we counteract the effects of our short staff. Yes, we're surviving on overtime right now. We have a lot of officers who are working a significant amount of overtime that's just not sustainable. But yes, the DFR program, our Arctic real-time information center, the FUSES, our MoCo Connect camera programs, our advanced use of LPRs, license plate readers, and our automated traffic enforcement. Those are all ways we can supplement patrol, take some of the burden off of our patrol officers and our patrol districts, help alleviate some of the workload. It's something that we're going to continue to expand and refine. But again, it's no replacement for actual bodies on the street.
Can I add one piece to this? And I think it's important to recognize. So first of all, Lana, I want to thanks for recognizing that crime is down year over year, but it's not where anyone on this call would like it to be. There are still places where we see theft from auto, for example, is places where we still like to make more inroads, and I think more police officers will help us with that. But one thing I think it's really important, and I think Chief alluded to the amount of overtime being utilized. There's a real differential in who's using the overtime as well. Younger officers tend to want to they enjoy a better work-life balance in some cases, and they really don't like to work as much overtime as some of the more senior officers who are closer to retirement. And so as those senior officers begin to retire, the overtime crunch could become more significant, which is why we need to increase the number of sworn officers on the complement so we can better sort of divide that necessary overtime over a larger pool of people instead of relying on our most senior officers to work a disproportionate burden of the overtime load that they have to right now. And so it's, we've made progress. We're going to continue to make progress. And as the Chief alluded to, technology is helping a lot with that. but we need to fill these seats. And as again, the chief alluded to, it's not just the 189 or whatever number it is that we're down that we need to address. It's probably a number in excess of 200 that we need to address. If you compare Montgomery County's sworn allocation per capita, we are amongst the lower that you will find in a metropolitan police department anywhere in the country.
Thank you, Doctor. I appreciate it. Thank you,
I
Chief.
just want to add to that. I mean, we are among the lower, on the bright side, we're also among the lower in terms of crime rates in Montgomery County. I do think that there's definitely a relationship between the amount of crime jurisdictions experience and the level of policing they put in place. But I agree completely with the chief and Earl in general about the need to have more officers. We are fortunate that so many people are willing to do the overtime that we need. But at the same time, the chief knows, I know that there are times when shifts are not fully staffed or not staffed at the levels that are optimal. And so the technology is great and the technology can help with things. But in the long run, we've got to have a base level of staffing that makes sure as we have police officers where we need them and have them when we need them. And the technology will even be more effective when we have, I think, higher levels of policing. So we're committed. I'm not going to rest on, a lower crime rate and say, well, now we don't need to add the police officers we need. We need to get back to the level of staffing that will work for us. And we need to continue to make improvements in technology because they make our police officers more effective and actually help them get their jobs done. So to me, we do both these things if we're going to be able to make progress. That's what's important to me. And so I've been willing, throughout all this, even some of the hardest times economically, to make sure that we're making investments in the police force and that we're paying them at rates that make this an attractive place to come and police.
And I would be remiss if I didn't recognize that the last night before the Ethics Commission, we had a proposal that would allow us to extend college credit to our recruits or those going through our academy, which we think that will actually be a significant additional benefit that will help us in recruitment as well. We're hoping to be able to include that benefit with the launch of the next class in January. So more to come on that. Yeah, like I said, it was before the Ethics Commission last night. We haven't heard a result yet from them, but as soon as we get that approval, we'll be able to move forward with that partnership, and we'll be making that announcement hopefully very soon.
All right, thank you, Lionel. Bob Barnard, Fox 5.
Thank you, Scott. This is for Mark and Mark, the county exec or the police chief. Are you getting any sense from ICE? We've heard reports that they may be kind of stepping up in terms of more of a tactical approach to what they're doing. Have you heard that potentially happening in the county? And I know your stance on things, but are you getting any kind of heads up when they're engaging in an action in the community?
We haven't gotten much lately. I mean, there was a period, I think, when we had more regular communications. I think, I saw a notice yesterday that there was that this area, this region, DC region, was on a list for the next group of areas that would see heightened activities, I guess, like we're seeing in Los Angeles. But we haven't gotten any notification of ICE, and Earl would be the one probably who would know if anything's changed because he's the one that's been in contact with them over, God knows, the past couple of years, actually.
Yeah, I'll chime in real quick. I have a very good working relationship with the ICE special agents in charge, and they do reach out periodically, but there's nothing that would be noted as an increase or anything like that. They continue to work their operations. There's been no large scale efforts here in Montgomery County that I'm aware of. But again, as County Executive alluded to, Dr. Stoddard serves as the liaison with ICE.
Yeah, I met with the acting director of the Baltimore Enforcement and Removal Operations Office, Director Nikita Baker, about a little over 2 weeks ago. She actually came down and visited us and sat in the office with us here in Montgomery County and talked through some process-related things. We're given no indication of really an increased enforcement in the way that we're seeing in California. Not that I think we would get notice like that. I would expect we would get notice in the immediate preceding of a large-scale operation like that, just to prevent there being any potential for intersection between our law enforcement and their operations. We wouldn't want there to be a mistaken, incident where, they were operating and we didn't know it and we thought there was some sort of armed assailant situation. And so obviously we've expressed that to them that if they're going to conduct an operation, we need at least minimum notice prior to, so that when we get the calls for service that kind of thing would generate, we know what we're responding to, and there's no opportunity for mistakes to be made in that situation. But I don't get the impression that we're going to get a ton of notice. Now, our Baltimore ERO office is extremely limited staffing on a general basis. So these are going to likely be agents that they're going to have to either bring in from the FBI or other law enforcement agencies or from other places across the country to be able to conduct these sorts of larger scale raids like we're seeing in the major cities across the country. And so obviously we would not have familiarity with many of those agents, or they wouldn't have familiarity with Maryland at all. And so obviously that's concerning to us. And my speculation would be it's a matter of time before we see these spread across the country, not a matter of if, but a matter of when. And so obviously we've seen more of a shift in who we see being detained, a lot more people who are quote unquote collaterals who have no criminal record being detained. We're seeing an increase in that. And so that's to be expected. We kind of figured the number of people that they would have with criminal records is limited. And so as they run out of those individuals to target, they're going to broaden the aperture, as I think Tom Homan previously said. And we're starting to see that both in Maryland and across the country.
Would any of you have a message for? I was talking to someone recently I know who said the person who's been his neighborhood handyman has been in the country illegally for like 30 years. Okay. Not a criminal, but just someone who kind of came here, stayed here. Any kind of message for those families who are not like you, Dr. Stoddard, you were saying are the primary targets, but could, be the collaterals? Like for those families in our communities who've been here a long time, but are here illegally.
We have limited ability, obviously, to change a person. We have no ability to change somebody's legal status. And if somebody's been here 30 years, you kind of wish they had gone through whatever process that might have normalized their presence here. But at the same time, for the longest time, and I've been in these discussions with ICE, and Earl's been in even more of them. They're very clear that they were not looking for people who were just here. As long as people were going about their normal business and, working and, had kids in school and, carrying on a normal life like everybody else here does, that they weren't really interested in that. They said they were interested in, the hardcore criminals. And that's the area that we've been able to help find, some common ground in terms of how we can work with each other. What they're doing now, obviously, is no longer we're just looking for the hardcore criminals. I think the news story I saw this morning was that they actually hit a meatpacking plant in the Midwest and took out a large number of people just because they weren't documented they were working there. This is the kind of thing that's going to have serious economic repercussions for this country. Because I know, because there's been many stories about the meatpacking plants and the lack of labor and how much our labor force is actually immigrants, undocumented immigrants, frankly, who've come into the United States and now work in these plants. If they start pulling out the bulk of the workforce from the meatpacking plants, all of us can be pretty sure we're not going to be seeing meat on the shelves of our grocery stores. These cities in the Midwest do not have large populations of unemployed people chomping at a bit to get a job in a meatpacking plant, because if they had, they wouldn't have been using the immigrant population anyway. So this shift to just people who are here and going about their businesses, and oh, by the way, usually paying taxes from which they get no benefit, this is going to lead to real economic disruption. So people should not be surprised if they start seeing shortages of food, meat prices going up and all this other stuff, because he's gone way beyond, let's take the criminals and the gangbangers out of here. If this is the game now to take everybody out of here, good luck on the economy, and good luck for the rest of us who are trying to, survive and, have people meet their basic needs and be able to do the things we're used to doing. It's going to alter the way things work, and not in the good way.
The one thing. Oh, go ahead, Chief. Go ahead.
I was going to say, and Bob, from a police standpoint, my message is really clear. I've said it a number of times. I'll say it again. I don't care what language you speak. I don't care what color your skin is, and I don't care where you were born. I don't care how long you've been here in the country. My promise is to provide the best police services that we can to everybody. And as we talked about our staffing challenges, I need every member of our community to feel safe. I need them to feel safe that they can report a crime, and I need them to feel safe that they can report being the victim of a crime.
I just have kind of one question based off
Well,
of.
I want to give one more piece of it because
Okay,
Bob
yeah,
was asking about one piece. So one thing we've begun to hear reports of, and this is, I would say this to anyone who is an immigrant in Montgomery County, whether you're here on a legal status or not, you have to be cognizant of where you are driving, particularly, or where you may be conducting your work. We've heard reports of contractors when they go onto federal installations and or federal properties being stopped and engaged with. And so if you're a contractor, if you're doing landscaping, if you're doing trash pickup and removal from a federal installation, you might expect to be stopped at this point. If you're an Uber driver or a Lyft driver picking up someone who's on a federal property, you might expect to be engaged by federal law enforcement agents at this point. And so this is a very different federal administration, and people need to understand that and think about the potential interactions that they're going to have with the federal government. Because as Chief Yamada said, the challenge you're going to face is not going to be from the Montgomery County Police Department. It's going to be in their interactions with federal. We have a large number of federal facilities, and there are probably locations that people don't realize are federal facilities in Montgomery County, and people need to be very cognizant when they're conducting their work. And again, this applies to both people who are here with a defined legal status, they're asylum seekers, etc. You should be prepared to engage with federal law enforcement if you are going to be on one of those properties, because that is certainly a way that they're expanding the scope of their enforcement.
Okay, hey, Bob, are you done with your questions?
Yeah, I am. Thank you, Scott. Appreciate it,
Sure.
guys.
No problem, Bob. Lionel, we'll come back to you in a second. Judy Hertz from the Only Gazette had her hand up for a while.
Thank you. I'd like to go back to the rallies for a moment, Chief. I know that there have been a lot of these hands-off rallies and gatherings around the county in the last couple of weeks. I know One and Only drew about 700 or 800 people back in the middle of April. I'm just wondering if all of those gatherings are following the rules, if you will, Chief. Have you had any problems with any of them, or are people minding the kind of rules and guidelines that they need to follow?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there have been certain instances where people have needed some extra conversation, but nothing usually more than that. As I said, I can't think of but maybe a couple of arrests that have been made, and those are usually folks that come to us beforehand and say, we want to be arrested. We will help you essentially facilitate that to arrest us. So there's generally no problems. Every once in a while, like I say, we officers do have to engage in some extra conversation, but for the most part, everybody's been really good about it. It's really trying to strike that fine balance between allowing the protesters to do what they want to do, but allow for everyone's safety, including theirs. And that's really the goal, is safety. It's never arrest or confrontation.
I know that at one point in that rally that was held in April at the corner of Georgia and 108, it was so loud from traffic honking their horns and things like that that it was as if there were loudspeakers and things like that. It was really very, I mean, how do you stop that? I guess you don't.
There's no way for me to stop somebody from honking their horn, either individually or in unison. I live there. I witnessed that firsthand. Yeah, if we were to get a complaint, we can try to go address it. But usually at that time, if it's in a car, those cars are long gone, and then it's somebody else. So being in a car creating noise like that is going to be really, really difficult. If it's somebody that's stagnant on scene, obviously we engage them in a conversation.
Okay.
And
Thank
also, Judy, I also that would be like a really poor use of resources to have police cars ready to chase cars that honk the horn. I think we need our police officers to do other more serious work and be distracted for this. So, my hope is that, that we require the minimal amount of our police to pay attention to these demonstrations so they can go about doing the things that the residents really want them and need them to do. So hopefully everybody keeps their cool going through this. And, the county is certainly not going to be an aggravating force. And hopefully the administration figures out how to do whatever it is they're going to do without creating havoc.
Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. Lionel Donovan, back to you.
Yes, I just kind of have one question in regards to Montgomery County and ICE, with and basically federal authorities, having these I'll say interactions with immigrants here in the Montgomery County community, given what you all are saying as far as the aperture being broadened and, them, these federal agents picking up more people. And, given the stances that, that you all have just kind of expressed, do you see a future where, somebody might try to actually call Montgomery County Police to help them deal with these federal agents? And do you see that happening, as you said, as the aperture is broadened and, federal agents, start to go after people who aren't hardened criminals and aren't doing anything outside of being in the country illegally? Do you see a possibilities of Montgomery County police officers having to be called in to step up to maybe stop people from being taken by federal agents?
Lionel, I don't see how that happens, and I'm sure the chief agrees with me. I mean, whether I like it or not, the agents are within their right to obviously arrest people who are here, who aren't documented. I don't agree with the policy. I think, for a long time, this country survived on a much more tolerant policy. And, a lot of us believe that a path to citizenship would have been the right thing to do. For some reason, this is a country where every immigrant group that has come to this country, and I'm including all the different white immigrants came from different countries in Europe, virtually every country, except for British people coming here, and that's a separate issue. Their residents have faced discrimination, all kinds of hardship when they came to this country and were not welcomed into this country initially. And, we're taking a very different approach with the Latino population than we've taken with other groups. We did not do mass deportations of Italians or Germans or people from Greece. People accommodated. Often people lived in their own, ghettos, as they would say back, in the early 20th century, in the early 1900s. But, they were not involved generally in being rounded up and shipped out of the country. This is a very different approach to immigration than we've seen before. But the federal state has the ability to do what they're doing, but they also have to do it within the law. And so one of the things we're clear about, whatever a federal agent does in terms of how they handle a person or approach a person, they can't engage in unprovoked brutality without also crossing a line with the law. So laws about how you treat people and how you interact apply both to demonstrators and to the people who are trying to collect the undocumented immigrants. Everybody has to obey the law. You cannot be violent on either side of this and expect to get away with it.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you. I think I don't see any more hands raised. Chief Yamada, you've given us more than plenty of your time. So I want to thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Kate Ryan, if this is about Parker, we'll get that to the end.
I did want to ask about Parker, and I did want to ask while the chief was here.
I'm gonna pop off. Thanks, guys.
What'd you want to ask?
When did we learn that this was coming? Was the council notified? How much is it costing? Who determines what it surveils? Who stores that data? Where does it go?
Well, that's
And is
Parker.
this part of the drone program as well?
So Parker is not part of the police department, but and Parker is it's a program that's being considered, piloted, tested by the Department of Transportation for the garages. I'm sorry, there's a few other questions there, and I
But
think
hey, Earl, do me a favor,
Yeah.
because there might be other people on this call
Yeah.
from the media that restart with who Parker is.
So Parker is
What
a
Parker is don't anthropomorphize the robot.
Yeah, Parker is a robot that is part of a security program in a garage. It's being tested in the Ellsworth garage in downtown Silver Spring. It is not something the county has decided to pursue at this point yet. It's being tested. And so it is in the preliminary phases, assessing, it hasn't been programmed for the garage specifically. It's being tested though in terms of, does it have any issues in our garage? Does it go up ramps and all those things effectively? All those things you would need to test before you engage in a decision around whether you purchase long term a piece of equipment like that. The program details will obviously be designed specifically around the interests of Montgomery County, and they'll be done so in concert both with the council and community engagement that would precede any hard launch of the technology. County Executive, do you want to add addition? I know you were given some additional briefing on this, but
Yeah, so it's at a very early stage right now, and they're doing training and they're making decisions about how it can be used. Issues about data will have to be resolved. Obviously, I think somebody mentioned it has 30 days storage of video. So the question is, how's that video going to be used? It would be my assumption that it would be consistent with what we do with drones, that, the only video you look at is video that's needed related to an incident. So if Parker's in a garage and there was a theft or an assault in the garage, you could use the video around the time of the assault or around the time of the theft to see who was in the garage and do you see anybody who was a possible suspect, somebody who maybe matches the description of somebody who was accused of assaulting someone who looks like they're carrying things that look like they could have come from a car that was robbed. But those are the kind of questions we have to answer. It's not a general surveillance tool, and it's not going to have its footage gone over constantly if there aren't reports, at least I hope. And that's one of the things we're going to talk about is when is the video footage actually used or accessed. But I think it could certainly play an important part in our garages because its ability to move certainly beats some of the, we have stationary cameras, but the ability to move through a garage might actually give us more information. And I do like the license plate reader aspect in terms of identifying stolen cars. That's
Who decided to bring it in?
What?
Who decided to pilot this here, and how much is it costing to pilot?
So I don't know the information on the cost. I think I heard a number. Was it around $100,000? Or I don't know, Earl, if you remember that.
I didn't have that number. We could get it for you, Kate. It's not a problem.
But it's coming from the Department of Transportation. That was the nexus of this. Because they have responsibility for security in the garages.
Okay. Have they contacted, are there any other jurisdictions in our area that have used this? The last time I've seen one of these in our area, it was at the Washington Harbor where it couldn't negotiate stairs and ended up in the water there.
I can't speak for that. I don't. There aren't many places that can wind up in water here. Particularly,
this is why we haven't purchased any sort of long-term commitment, because we wanted to test that kind of thing before we entered into any long-term procurement related to this. In addition to the fact that we need to do the community engagement, there needs to be, we were widely credited for the way that the Drone as First Responder program was launched across the county. And I certainly think before we engaged in a use of a technology in any sort of long-term capacity, we would do a very similar and comparable level of community engagement and public education and, public feedback process on how this sort of technology could or should be utilized. But in order for us to even have that conversation, we need to be able to say, like, is this even technically feasible before we engage in those community conversations? And that's really what's being tested right now.
Right. And I have to say, we only heard about it. Fox 5 was the first to report it, as far as I know, but it has been in the garage. We were supposed to have an interview with someone at DOT, and then we got word that we would not get that interview. So I'm just curious about, why this is present there, but no one wanted to talk about it until weeks from now.
Because it's being trained right now. So it's present there, but it's not actually operating and saving film and doing, it's not being used in an operational sense. They're trying to train the thing. And that's what they want to do. I mean, personally, for me, I hope it learns how to use the elevators in the garages to go from floor to floor, because, running up and down ramps could be a little bit concerning. But I do think there's utility in it. So I'm hoping that we get through the training phase. I think they'll tell you a lot more about what it can or can't do after they've trained it. And the plan was to actually do a press conference when we got to the point where we knew what we were going to use it for exactly and how it was operating. You just happened to stumble into a garage when they were just there beginning the process of trying to figure out how it works. So stay tuned.
But Chief Yamada, again, people have been, the reaction to drones has been positive. They've been cited as very effective. I don't know anything about the track record of these bots in other jurisdictions. And Chief, are you in on the conversations about the use of these in any way?
I haven't been involved in any conversation with the Director Conklin over at DOT about it. I'm aware that they were having a press conference about it, but other than that, no.
Do you see a role for it since it has LiDAR technology and storage and?
Well, as the county executive alluded to, there's opportunity there for license plate reader capabilities and some other things. Anytime, and it's a much more mobile camera than the stationary ones you might find in a stairwell or a one single area that can't cover the dark corner of a parking garage. The parking garages there's risks there. And I think this is a good way to try to minimize those risks to the users. So yeah, I'm open to learning on what it can do, and how this can supplement public safety.
Thank you very much. I do appreciate it.
Yeah.
Okay, I just say in general, we're very open to looking for applications of technology that can make law enforcement more effective. It's partly it's a limitation on because of the number of officers that we have, that kind of I think has helped drive some of the search for technology here. But I think in general, it's a good idea to look at what you can do with technology to enhance what you're doing and do it more effectively. And I think we've always been pretty respectful of making sure we have guardrails, which is as Chief said, the way we unveiled the drone program. We had a lot of public input, and the public input resulted in policies that address civil liberties concerns. And I always have civil liberties concerns about things, but I also know if they can be addressed, we ought to be looking at technologies that can be effective. And so I've tried, I try to keep an open mind on this. And I think, myself and other people are persuadable that this is usable. We just have to see how it's going to be used and, make sure we have the right safeguards on it.
Got it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Kate, I think also several council members actually introduced legislation that's still before the council that sort of aims to codify some of the standards that were utilized during the Drone as First Responder program for how you do community outreach during technology launch and procurement. And obviously we're going to follow a very similar standard to what that legislation reflects, but also what we did as a Drone as First Responder program. And so It's sort of it's a little bit cart before the horse in the sense that the technology is not being actively utilized. It's being tested, and before we even go down the road of a very difficult, complicated, and engaging process with the community, we want to make sure that is the technology even possible to utilize before we put in a lot of community effort into that. And so once we know that the technology is viable, then we would engage with the community to develop the process. What would the parameters be? How is the data stored? All those things. And so it's just we're very early on the evaluation stage.
Thank you very much.
And Kate, just FYI, I believe there was just someone caught this and put it on Reddit, and that's how it went around the community and then to the media. I think it was just one of those testing things someone caught, and it caught on fire in the Reddit community.
And understood, but it's kind of toothpaste is out of the tube, so we have questions.
Yeah, understandable. Yeah. Thank you so much, Kate. Chief Yamada, I think you can go now. Thank you so much for your time.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
Okay. County Executive Elrich, back to you on some other issues.
There's one quick comment for Kate. The reason why we do these weekly briefings is to keep people informed. And so we expect questions. So, there's no question that's unwelcome. We've been pretty, committed to this process. I think we've been doing this now since about a month after COVID. And, we decided to maintain these kind of briefings because we want to make sure that we can answer and do answer questions that people have. So your questions are always welcome.
Thanks.
Not always fun to answer, but always welcome.
Thank you.
So meanwhile, back at the briefing, just a couple of other things. First, we're noting the opening of Trader Joe's at the Square this week, and it's a significant step forward in Rockville's efforts to stimulate growth and stability in Rockville Town Center. It adds a well-known anchor to the center and reflects the continued momentum we're seeing across the county. And I was glad that they were able to replace what was intended to be a grocery anchor with another well-known grocery store. And this really is important. Oftentimes in retail shopping centers, the grocery store is the thing that everybody comes for, and the other shopping is incidental. And so the presence of a grocery store, and in this case, is a well-recognized grocery store, I think, is something that's going to be beneficial to Rockville's efforts to revitalize that center and fill empty spaces. So I'm very glad they were successful at this. Rockville's success obviously is important to the county. It's a hub for jobs, housing, culture, and innovation, especially in our growing life sciences corridor. And their rebranding of Rockville Town Square into the Square is helping create a more attractive destination for residents and small business, as well as some of the larger employers looking to invest here. This project reflects what we've heard from the community. People want more local business activity, more events, and a better pedestrian experience. The return of the grocery store was a priority. And, certainly Trader Joe's meets that need. So I'm optimistic about what's ahead for the Square and for Rockville. And these kind of investments are helping build a stronger local economy. And that's all a good thing. Montgomery County has been awarded $15 million from the Maryland Department of Housing and Community Development to expand high-speed internet access in our affordable housing communities. This includes a second round of funding, nearly $7.5 million, to expand broadband to another 2,200 affordable housing units throughout our MoCo Net program. That's in addition to the first round we received last year that brought high-speed service to 1,500 homes. Altogether, we'll have more than 3,000 homes connected. I want to thank Governor Wes Moore and Secretary Jake Day and the Office of Statewide Broadband for their leadership and support. This is the largest award given to any jurisdiction in the state through this program, and it's going to have a direct impact on people's lives. We know that internet access is essential. People need it to do homework, find jobs, and access healthcare, and stay connected. And having access to internet isn't enough if you don't have the right device. And so we're pleased to work with our Office of Technology and Business Solutions, which we call TEBS, in case you ever hear that acronym thrown around, has achieved in addressing the digital divide. Last year, the department won Best Municipal or Public Connectivity Program by expanding free internet and promoting digital equity. Through TEBS Montgomery County Connects program, we've also distributed more than 60,000 free laptop computers to lower income residents over the last several years. Our final large scale distribution effort reached 25,000 residents just last year. We've worked hard to make sure families not only have a connection, but also have the tools they need to use it. This broadband investment builds on the work. It's part of our larger strategy to improve economic opportunity and support our residents. And we're moving quickly with our partners at the Housing Opportunities Commission and Affordable Homes and Communities to get this work underway, and we expect it to be completed by September of 2026. In other distressing news, and of course, RFK Jr. can always be part of distressing news. Before I turn to our HHS team, I want to talk a minute about RFK Jr.'s decision to remove 17 members, all of them members of the CDC's Vaccine Advisory Committee. This is dangerous. These are experts whose job it is to review science and give public health guidance. You just don't wipe out decades of expertise because you don't like what the evidence says. It is absurd to listen to Kennedy claim that this was done to build public trust. If anything, this will only undermine the trust people have in vaccines and in public health more broadly. Once again, the guy who says not to listen to him for medical advice is undermining public health by imposing his uninformed, unscientific views on an agency that has contributed enormously to saving lives and protecting public health. He's actually putting lives at risk. It's also a direct threat to innovation. Many of the companies here in Montgomery County, some of the most respected names in bio and life sciences, are working on vaccines and next generation therapeutics. They depend on regulatory clarity and scientific integrity. When the federal government starts playing games with public health infrastructure, it disrupts the entire pipeline of medical innovation. I also want to recognize NIH researchers who just released the Bethesda Declaration. It's a courageous and principled stand against political interference in science. They're calling out decisions that are actively undermining NIH's mission, cutting off billions in life-saving research and threatening academic freedom. I'm proud that such an important and timely document carries the name Bethesda, a community that stands for excellence in science and public service. What's happening now at HHS, NIH, and FDA threatens the health of all Americans and the integrity of one of our nation's most important institutions. We should all be paying attention. This should not be a partisan issue. I know people, Republicans, Democrats, unaffiliated alike, who benefit from the scientific advances, from the drugs and treatments that often started with something that was found at NIH. America and NIH in particular have been an international magnet for scientists working in life sciences. I know this from my travels, more recently to Asia, where NIH was well known and FDA were well known, where I've met scientists from Asia, from all around the world, frankly, who've come to be in Montgomery County to work in NIH and work with companies that work with NIH. They've greatly contributed to the progress that's been made in medical research and its impact on all of our lives. Trying to strangle that research, which is what Trump, Musk, and Kennedy are trying to do, is going to send this country backwards. It also will likely result in scientists, both American and foreign, beginning to look for research opportunities in China, the rest of Asia, and in Europe. These scientists want to work. They want to help advance healthcare and medical discoveries that make life better for people. And if they can't do it in the United States, they're going to do it someplace else. And there are other places they can go where there's a welcome mat and a respect for science. And what Trump and his clown posse are doing is basically saying, we don't respect science. We're not interested in knowledge. It's politics and only politics that matter. People want to be in places where scientific inquiry is valued and not being hamstrung by politicians who have no respect for science. So this is not just a threat to NIH. It's a threat to the United States in general. It's a threat to the research that's being done here and the companies that are anchored here. You want to get people to de-anchor from the United States and find a better place to do their work, keep doing things like this, and you'll see what kind of economy you have. It's not going to be the economy you want. What's most disturbing is the reaction of the Republican House and Senate members. In Trump's last term, when he tried to defund NIH, Congress united across party lines to not only restore funding, but to actually increase NIH funding. They were eloquent, again, across party lines about why NIH was important to America and to Americans. Now, these very same people are silent, accomplices to the destruction of one of the most respected institutions in the world. The only word for this 180-degree reversal in their positions on NIH is disgusting. They are placing loyalty to the president above their responsibilities to the American people, and that's shameful. Before we open up to questions, I'd like to give my staff an opportunity to provide any other updates they'd like to share.
Dr. Bridgers, Sean?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. Mr. County Executive, you summed it up adequately. The Department of Health and Human Services will continue and will always use evidence-based practices. The advisory committee by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention was one of our cornerstone advisory committees that we use in our vaccine and testing strategy. So we won't back away from that, regardless of what the folks in DC are saying, or down in Washington on 16th Street. We know that it's a trusted approach, and it's proven that these strategies work. They will always be our guide, and speaking on behalf of our health officer, chief medical officer, Dr. Keisha Davis. This is her advice to the community and my advice as well. Having said that, I'll turn it over to Mr. O'Donnell for any additional vaccine or communicable diseases update.
Just to share, and I think we may have mentioned this in a previous meeting, but one of the decisions that was made before the ACIP team was let go, I believe is a decision from the FDA, was that the COVID vaccine that will be available in the fall will be the same constitution as the vaccine that we've had this past year. The ACIP group is the group that normally helps determine who should be getting that vaccine, and so it remains to be seen what their recommendations will be. But just as an update, that a decision was made to keep the vaccine the same for this coming year, which will be the first time since COVID started, and that is based on their evaluation. There has not been enough shift in the COVID variants to necessitate an updated vaccine. No other updates in infectious disease in the county. So
the only thing I would add before I turn it over to Dr. Stoddard to see if he had any additional input is, as a rule of practice, if you are sick or you are at risk or immunocompromised, please consult your primary care physician or a healthcare provider. That is the number one best practice that you can employ through these turbulent medical and clinical times. The provider will always be able to advise you whether or not you need any vaccine, any booster, any update. So, Dr. Stoddard.
I've got no additional comments this afternoon.
All right. Any further questions from the media? Please raise your hand. I know we've gone a little long. We'll give people a couple seconds here. Looks like I have no takers, so we'll wrap it up there. Thank you, everybody, for joining us this week, and hope everyone has a healthy and safe weekend. Appreciate it.
Take care, you all.